Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we'll be exploring how to paint some of the simple perspectives, some beautiful architectural elements of some of the arches from Istanbul. So we're looking at one of university white mosques. So this is a white mosque, one of the largest university in the city. Very beautiful gardens around it, some fantastic architectural structures. So I was really fascinated because they reminded me of all the European um, cloisters and universities and other buildings, which are really fascinating. So we're using violet background today to help us create the painting. We have a lot of shadows, so having a darker background will help us already to kind of to represent the existing tones. And we will be looking for some lighter tones for a little bit of positive and negative spaces. I'd like us to start with a sketch. We have a minimal use of color today, which I'll talk to you through shortly. But I'd like us to look at the simplicity of the structure, how we can simplify a complex, perhaps, view. But also simplicity of color and find those shapes. I'd like us to kind of check our drawings and check our structure by not just using line, but also shapes. Okay, and a darker violet background will help us out. So on my palette, I have some white, some ochre, violet. So I've got two warm colors, and I have some ultramarine and Payne's grey. Payne's grey, I've got a little bit of black, blue in it, but if you have any other black, it's fine as well. And I'm going to start with using a little bit of terps to sketch with. So I've got my round brush, and I'm going to use diluted version of violet and tiny bit of Payne's grey. Now I tend to sketch on a darker background with some lighter colors, but because we need to be quite sensitive and sensible with the use of line, I think it's easier to paint over some of the darker tones and kind of turn shapes into some shadows than having very glowing like light lines that might disrupt our view today. So a bit of violet, a little bit of Payne's grey. I can just check what that color is going to look like so I can see it on my board quite easily. Right, so first thing I'd like us to do is to find where that distant arch, that wall in the shape of the arch is, how far it's going to be, how much of the space of the floor we're going to have, and how much space away from the top part of our board of our painting is going to be. Now, if you have a little bit wider canvas or board or slightly bit more narrow, it doesn't matter. Just to kind of have a feel for it. If it will be a little bit more stretched or a little bit more wide, it doesn't matter. Just you might want to extend a bit more floor, you might want to extend a bit of ceiling, and all of that will work quite well. So I'm going to approximately find the space of the floor, and if I were to measure, I'll pick up a clean brush. Actually, it might be easier to manipulate it. If I were to measure the length of that backdrop wall, okay, and let's have a look how many times it will fit in the ceiling. Okay, once, probably once, a little bit more than 1.5 times. Yeah, maybe just a tiny bit more. So if I were to place my approximate size door, the wall there, and if I were to measure that one, can I fit it once, Okay, that's twice, so maybe it's need to be bigger. Maybe the floor space might need to be a little bit moved as well. So if I want to wipe anything off, I just use a little bit of tissue. Okay. And again, let's have an approximate measurement. 1. Okay, and that's going to be a half. Yeah, that's probably more likely there. So don't be scared of taking your time just to find an approximate position width-wise, okay? If it would be a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller is better than a little bit bigger. And where that wall, where that back arch space is going to be in comparison to left and right, okay? Again, we can approximately just compare it, which space is bigger, the right space, yeah, or the left space. So on the left, we can see almost, if not doubling, yeah, it's almost doubling. So approximately maybe, not maybe too far from the right, maybe a bit more. Let's have somewhere, perhaps somewhere here. Maybe somewhere here. So I can just move this one across. Okay, and it's quite a wide, actually, arch, quite a wide space. The hole, it's not elongated, it's quite, you almost can put a square and then extend that shape of the arch. Okay. So it's not super tall. I think the actual roundness of the shapes will start a little bit further off the square shape. Okay. Quite an oval type of shape. Then I just remove that one. That's just more to help us out to understand the form. Okay. And I don't want you to feel too precious now about the shape. Maybe the shape is too big. Maybe the shape is not quite in the right place. Maybe the shape need to be moved or maybe need to be much smaller. So I'd like us just to have a little play with perspective, a little play with an idea of the space. We're going to draw a couple of floor perspective lines and a couple of points for the top top parts of the columns, the capitals, just to have that understanding. So for the floor, you can use a direction of your brush to place it against the floor, and you can just bring it over to the corner of your back wall. And that will give us that direction. Okay, so it's visually compare. So you can draw it, you can drag it, you can again compare it. Okay, maybe this could go even higher a little bit, approximately. Slightly wider stroke, slightly narrower stroke, and things are changing there, but so we want to do it approximately. And the other stroke, you could have also put how much space we have on the side, on the left-hand side of the canvas, but it's might be slightly different. Direction is better. And then we have a narrow line. You might see it on your photograph where the bases of the columns stand. So we're looking for that line as well. And again, I can do a directional line approximately here. Okay. That's what give us directions of the columns. For the ceiling and for the top part of the gallery, we haven't got the direct easy lines. We need to come up where those lines are going to be. So if I were to look for the bottoms of the arches, we've got these lovely just arches. They link to the column at one place and they stay on the floor on the other side. We've got those metal brackets, metal support structures which keep the arches in place now. So we can look for where these lines are. So that is going to be the shape. Okay. So if I'll pick up 2 or 3 dots, that's give me that direction. And I'm looking for where it's going to meet my back wall. So roughly somewhere just before that round top of the arch is going to start. Okay. So first, with perspective, we pick things up visually, yeah, and we compare it visually, and then we start connecting things geometrically on our canvas. But geometrically, I mean, if we were to continue this line straight, ideally, and we continue this line, where we're going to have our vanishing point somewhere here. And if I've done things correctly, this line should come to this line as well. Okay, so somewhere here. Yours might be somewhere a little bit more lower, tiny bit more left, tiny bit more right, but approximately there. Okay, and maybe that tells me without using a ruler. If you have got a piece of board, it will give you more of a straighter shape. So I'm looking if I know where this point is via the much more correct lines from the floor, it's more likely that my line upwards is going to be just a little bit more straighter here. As long as these 2 lines give you a point, so my arch is probably just that arch line is somewhere here. Thicker lines, a little bit tricky to see. Okay. So dot is there, vanishing point there, arch is somewhere here, little corner is somewhere there. Okay. Now for the wall on this side, to find an equivalent version for the wall here, it will be quite similar. We can track it from this spot. If we were to put something on the wall, let's say for where our arch is going to be, so perhaps one's going to start there, one's going to start there. Let's have a look how many we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4th one somewhere we can't see. So maybe 1, might just put it a little bit closer together. 1, maybe 2, a little bit bigger distance, and perhaps somewhere 3, and the 4th one somewhere here. So the reason I'm doing that, so our metal brackets will start coming across. And that will give us, every time they're going to land on our wall, we're going to approximately find where it's going to go and meet the columns. I think what I've done, my line's gone a little bit, not horizontal enough, they're just gone a little bit wobbly. Okay, but somewhere there. Okay, that will give us the tops of our columns, the tops of the capitals, yeah? So this is our capital on the column. Okay, this is the shaft, and then it holds the block of the wall. And you've got all the lovely patterns in there. So this is the spot we're looking for. Okay, just top up my paint. Let's top up my paint here. So I can even make those lines just a little more clearer. And the last arch, we can't quite see. We can see it in the corner here. It's just coming in here, but we can't see where it's going to be on our picture. So we can make it almost an approximate judgment space-wise. Yeah, it's quite a big chunk of space gap. So if we approximately place it somewhere here, it will give us an idea where our column is going to be here. Okay, and this is the column which we'll see quite clearly. Okay, on the photograph we have a little bit of third point of perspective. Our walls a little bit coming in. If you want to do that, that's fine. If you want to just do it straight, that will be fine as well. Okay, so I've done one column here. It's actually falling down a little because it should be leaning straight, but actually it's got a shadow, so to fix it might be easier for me just to shade it. Okay, it's now less fallen. Still a little bit wobbly, but that's okay for now. Okay.
So I've got a question.
Yes.
Have you just done, it looks much bigger in your picture than it does on the photo.
Yes. So I'm going to make an approximate decision of where things are going, and then I'm going to decide if I'm going to adjust it or keep it as it is. Does that make sense? I don't want to make a judgment if I'm right or wrong yet. Yeah,
Okay.
I want to have a rough understanding of what's going to be happening. So if I'm shrinking or adjusting things, I want that to follow later. Okay, because things might just fall into similar lines, but just become a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, just let's see what's going to happen next. Okay. And let's just double check. If we were to draw those three arches, it might give us an idea of how much space we have and how much, yeah, if that's the right look for the space altogether. So I'm going to, now the arches will follow a similar, almost like a similar angles of the arch at the back. So I've got my first one, okay, parallel, and it's going to land somewhere here. Okay, almost. It's not quite straight, they're a little bit more, okay. They're a little bit more, here's our, probably our line is going to be here. Okay, so they're going to land, okay, I've got it. So each time our arch, so this is the middle of my arch, each arch will slowly start moving a little bit more to the left. Tiny bit more paint here. So we've got one arch, and it will land close in the first two arches. They're almost on the same line. First arch, second arch. It's just only, we're talking about small millimeters. It's the last arch which we can't see, which is just right here. It has a much more bigger jump. How much it's going to be moved towards the right. The rest of them are almost in the same line. So they will be just extending widths mainly towards the left. Okay, so they need to be symmetrical within their own shape. Okay. There we go. And if we've done it right, again, that perspective will fall into that vanishing point of those middle parts, yeah? They will all fall into that shape there again. But even if you just sketch them and just make them roundish, and they're just getting slightly bigger as they're going towards us, that will be plenty. Okay.
So have you made up that last arch? It's not on the
This one.
picture.
No, the last one is going to be starting probably somewhere here, and it's going to be somewhere here. Okay, I can just see the wall of it here. Can you see that?
Hmm.
It's that same, just tiny bit of the bricks we can see. So I can't see it really. It's probably more like that. And that's where the ceiling is going to start. Can you see that?
But you've got 4 arches here and only
Yes.
3 there.
1, 2, 3. Hold on. Have I overtaken them? 1, 2, 3. Yes. And that's my so that's the first one, the back wall, yeah. And then 1, 2, 3. So that's the back wall, and then 1, 2, 3. That's the back wall arch, and then the actual 3 ones we can see. Okay, 1, the back wall, dark, and then half the arch doesn't rest anywhere, 2 and 3. Okay, good. So I've got to say 1, 2, 3 columns, and the big one, which is holding something we can't see fully. It will be coming somewhere here. And that, if I were to continue that line, that's where that middle point is going to be, somewhere just off my picture. Okay, and that's where we know that that's going to be the shape. Okay. Okay, good, good, good. If we were to put these lines down all the way to the floor and then put them across, if I can do it even straight, it'll be even better. We'll find the base of our columns, but they're going to be so tiny, it's not going to make much difference. They're going to be just somewhere here, somewhere here, somewhere here. Yeah, where our bases of the columns is going to be. Our strokes are so wide with oil painting, so just approximately, we're just going to place them somewhere there. So in a way, I can draw my next column. Okay, and the other columns are going to be just little lines of rhythm of lines, and that's about it for now. I'm going to play with the light there than anything else. Okay. Doing well. And then we have tiny bit of work to finish. Now, in between each arch on this wall, we have another arch, which is looking that way and looking that way. Well, we've got an arch going here. We can just see half of it or a little shape of it. And we see that arch going from my column upwards. And it's just so narrow, this space. It's almost looking like just not quite a perfect straight line. It's just a little bend of the line there. I'll do a little bit of the texture of the bricks there so we can see an approximate direction for it. When we start painting, we'll lose those bricks, so I don't want to spend over too much time on that. So by putting a couple of these spaces, it might give us an understanding if we're on the right place with proportions. I think I'm happy with things as they are for the moment. And this line is going to also give us the windows, which I'd like us to just to draw freehand approximately there, somewhere there. And the same will be with the doors. They're going to be approximately. And we can start making a decision. Is our space is looking the right size? Okay. I think I'm going to stay with mine as it is. I could have put that back wall tiny bit more smaller, but I think even if I exaggerated it a little bit, it will work for now. And I can see my details here as well. Not too tiny. Okay, so perhaps the door a little bit too big, but somewhere here. And what I wanted to do when I was talking about in the beginning of the session is to get a little extra tone in place to find those shapes and to find their relationship between each other. So I'm using the same violet and Payne's grey. They're more violet in it than Payne's grey, but just a darker version of it. Okay, so that's going to be my darker tone now. If the surface will become quite oily, it's not a problem, or full of turbs or runny. Not oily, runny. It's not a problem. It will be quite nice for us to work with it afterwards. Okay, and then I can also do a little bit of darkness on my ceilings. All we see is semicircle of the circle part of that circle pattern. Just want you visually to find the spot roughly. Okay, there will be pattern on. You can just color it in for now as a shape. Okay, and this large one, quite an open, big. Might actually stretch it out lower. Just a little lower. Okay. Then it's going to be in there. But it's going to have some darkness in there anyhow. Okay, we've got that. Oh, just spotted my arch. It's going to actually stretch much further here. Sorry. It's going to be like this arch. It's going to be just reaching out and getting to reach that space where it's going to be perhaps hidden partially. So apologies, this all is gonna go all the way. That's why I was talking about nice straight space there. And this column's next arch is going over our head, so it's almost as a straight shape there. Going to come in. So the basic of our structure was a space of the floor, and we were trying to find where that spaces were, but we had an arch, we had an arch, we had an arch, we had an arch. We had those connections made. Yeah. And that's just a very simplified understanding of what we were doing. Okay. And if I were to check for any other darker tones, I might want to keep strong dark. I think maybe the bottom of my column and the bottoms of the couple of more columns at the back. Just very simplified. Those doors, which are not standing on the floor, they're raised. So they're just going to be just a little stroke of darkness in there. We can have a look at the details after. Okay, so we're not doing the thicknesses of arches, we're not doing anything else. We just want to see some structure at the back. And I think my lines are going lower. I think they're running down. So I thought my door is looking a little lower than I wanted it. Okay, somewhere there. Okay. And let's start using some color. Let's give you a moment to check anything you need to look at, and let's start looking at some color and tone. Right, now I'm going to pick up slightly larger brush. I'm going for a filbert brush, and I'm going to start to look for some lighter tones. Right, I should have had my oils really. So we can have a bit more oily surface now. I finished my drawing. I might close my tabs for now. We have the most dark tones. We've got quite a lot of medium tones from the original background color. So let's find the most lighter ones. Now we can see a little bit of daylight. It's not a huge amount, and it is tiny bit different to what I've drawn because I haven't got 3-point perspective. But also we have this wall and parts of our columns lighter too. We've got maybe a tiny bit of light in the back of the wall. Okay, so I'm going to slightly exaggerate that as well. So first, let's do a little bit of lighter tone for the sky. So I'm going to use some white and some ultramarine. Okay. It looks quite a light tone when I'll put it on my screen. So I want to put it on my my board. Okay, maybe tiny bit more thicker. I think I just want to have it a little bit less runnier because I have some of the oiliness, some of the runniness on the board already. Okay, so let's just block some of that light here. Okay, a little bit like painting by numbers. A bit more here. Can I see a little gap of light? And the lower I'll go, the lighter I can get my blue. Okay, there will be some buildings there as well, so they will be finishing reasonably quickly. So there is a lit up area of the building that courtyard is turning, but I think that would be quite nice to see, just a little extra light. And just to exaggerate the color of my sky, I think I'm going to put on the top part of it a slightly more blue. So when we actually see the whole picture together, it just doesn't look too whitish. Photographs often, cameras compensate for that volume of light within a darker environment. I think that might be better. Okay, now I already went over part of my wall, so I can correct all that one afterwards as well. So I'm introducing a little extra light with a cool color. And I'm going to wipe my brush. Our blue wasn't overly intensive, so just wiping the brush will be enough. And I'm going to have some warmer colors mixed now. So I'm picking up some white and some ochre. Because I don't have any extra oil, and I wipe my brush, that blue is no longer present. Okay. Now if we want to have tiny bit of runniness, a little bit of softness in the paint, that's when we dip the brush in the oil as well. Now, if I were to compare two colors, the blue and the yellow, okay, that's when everything will start reflecting. They will be very much far apart in its light, okay? So to make our wall slightly bit darker, we want some light, but we don't want it bold, yellowish in color. We can add tiny bit of violet, very, very small amount. It will just make our ochre slightly deeper, slightly changing in that darkness. Okay. And I meant to start putting those variations here. Okay. So I'm going to place it on my opposite wall just to see if that's going to be quite. I want to exaggerate my colors. Now the image, my second image I've given you today, we've got very simple colors and I want to exaggerate the color. So we've got quite a boring brownish gray tone and I want just to exaggerate the color a little bit more, to vary it and make it slightly more exciting. Vary the warmth, vary the color altogether. So I'm just placing it there. Doesn't mean that's going to be the final color and the final tone. Just want to see how it will stand there. Okay, so that's a bit more solid ochre and violet. What about if I add a bit more extra oil and make it a little more runny? And as I'm going higher, I can use that diluted color. That will make, when the oil will dry or settle at least on our surface, it will start looking slightly darker, and that light will slowly be will be disappearing towards the ceiling. Okay, so that diluted layer is getting present now. Okay, and if I were to lift my board again, it will stop reflecting as much. Okay, that's a bit better. And I can work with my strokes because it's all diluted. You will have some texture there, so don't be scared of just seeing a little bit more of a shape. Okay, there. That's for now. Just leave it there. And I'm gonna make my other spaces around. I don't want to lose the beginnings of my arches. So if I were to leave that kind of direction, don't want to lose those corners. I'll keep that perspective direction or direction for my doors because they very easily could get lost. Okay, and that's why if we have a simplified drawing, we can redraw it, come back to it, shape it back. Okay, just working into some of that. And I'm going to wipe my brush and I'm going to stretch this color out. It's quite a lot of paint on my brush. The spaces are quite small. So I'm going to just gently reach out for those areas. Okay, something is getting lighter there. And the texture we're starting to have, the directions of the strokes, that variation of the blend, they will start to be our painting. Yeah, they will start giving us a character for the painting. Okay, and that's exciting elements of it. If I'll use the same color, maybe back to that darker, just in case if I diluted it a bit more, back to violet and ochre, maybe similar darkness, maybe tiny bit more darker version. I can also place it just next to our lines for those half arches. Okay, just touching it somewhere on one side, and it disappears in its darkness. So we're now going to start making spaces. Okay, so the wider strokes we were sketching with, in a way, already give us a shadow. Okay, now my lines might be looking all the same. It needs to be a bit narrower at the back, a bit more wide at the front. But again, by the time I'll paint the ceiling and the spaces there, I probably will pay attention a bit more to tweak it. And this part of the arch will have the same surface. It's actually, we're not seeing this lower part, that's where the surface is tiny bit lighter, but we're seeing somewhere that surface where the space becomes much darker. So in a way, I can make it even darker. So I can make my paint mix my oak and violet will have more violet in it. Okay. Probably still not quite the color we want, maybe not even the darkness we want, but just to give it a little bit more connection. Okay. And another reason for why we have more violet background is for us to be encouraged to see more color from the duller grays, making it a tiny bit more exciting. Okay. Now I think by mixing that darker violet and ochre, I give me an idea of what the more browny wall could look like. I think that will be quite a nice color for midway of my back wall. I'm mixing it with my runny existing darkness there. And then if I'll go lower, I might mix more orangey version of oak and violet combination. Okay, maybe somewhere here. Not sure what that black block, I think some sort of storage in there. So I might just avoid that. Okay, and we've got some decorative patterns around. Okay, that starts just slowly lifting and becoming a little bit more exciting. And that window now, yeah, we can see the light behind. Can I use a little extra white with ochre? So I'm moving from one color to another. After I wipe my brush after blue, I haven't cleaned my brush. Okay, can I make it a little extra lighter for all of that window? Okay. Can you see how it's bright, shining at us there? And again, because I've got quite a lot of tubes, oils, runny paint across, I can even place some hints of light reflecting on the frame close by. And I might even use some of that light in the frame of the door, just catching a little extra light on the side perhaps. I'm going to get rid of my outlines of the back wall that just a little bit interrupting here. Okay, so it becomes soft. Where's my wall finished? Where's my side wall started? It's getting slightly lost, which is quite nice. Okay. Oops. No, I don't want any light there. I meant to smudge my darker color there. If your smudging, kind of the runniness of colors, helps you and it encourages you to put shapes and strokes quite playfully, that's great. If you started to struggle to place, let's say you want to place something on a runny surface and you can't, make sure you have drier brush and more solid, thick paint. Then it will stay there. Okay. Okay. So that's quite painterly door. Again, I might just want to get rid of that very dark violet line because we haven't got quite a dark line. It might be a little bit of a corner, but maybe not quite dark line. Now I'm considering making the floor slightly cooler, but at the same time, if I were to explore the light and make the light stretching out behind our columns, might be a little bit of warmth bringing across might be a good idea. So if I were to go for, again, ochre and violet, but this time I were to use some extra white. So instead of that yellowish color, I'm going to have kind of pinkish purple color. That might be a nice color for some of the light coming in. Okay, good. So let's bring a little bit of light. And with that light, I'm going to test it out. If I don't like it, we can wipe it off. So I'm going to bring a little bit of light following. Remember how we were doing connections next to the columns? So if we use just some of the horizontal lines, they will also help us to see the space. But there also probably will be kind of gaps between our columns, which will give us some light. Now this column might have a little bit of light behind it here. Okay, my next column is somewhere here. Okay. And what I'd like to do next is to blend this color. If I wipe my brush off, okay. So the floor on the photograph got some texture of marble. Is the shadows quite hard to follow? Is it quite an flat type of light? So let's make it exciting. So just a clear, cleaner brush, and let's just soften this light and blend it just to make a little bit more something different. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's much more exciting. And I'm going to make some more light on arches here, and then we'll do the we'll paint the ceiling. Now the arch which is going almost vertically up and turning. We can't see the other side of it. And the other arches, they just got a little extra light because it's a darker brick. We've got some lovely pattern there. I've sketched it dark, but it's actually much lighter. So let's mix some warmer color, maybe lighter than our back wall, but maybe not as yellowish, maybe more into the red. So we need a little bit of that violet present there. The violet helps us to make it slightly reddish towards that warmth. Now, if I put a mark there, I'll find out maybe a little bit more white there. Okay, maybe somewhere there. And just to make it go with the design of the wall, now we can paint it, all of it, or we can just play with a little bit of that pattern. Okay, and it will finish on that wall, and it will somewhere finish on that blue sky. That's where it's a tiny bit trickier with oils because it's very soft. Okay, there. And we'll have similar spaces at the back, but this time I will use more of a line. I think if I were to make this shape a tiny bit narrower, okay, just a tiny bit more narrower, then my next one will fit in better. Okay, another one is somewhere there. Can't see it perfectly, but it's somewhere there. And the space on this column got the same principle, but again, I might just make it slightly darker, and it's just that change of color, perhaps. That tiny bit more variation. Okay, and even if I were to, that's where I can correct my blue here a little more as well. If my blue went slightly over the shape. Okay, and maybe this time I will put darker stripes or just a hint of darker texture. In some architecture, in some of the mosques, that detail is really strong, and it deliberately emphasized the contrasts, which is quite striking. So this is optional, but it could be quite playful. Again, if I'll establish those shapes, yeah, I've got one shape, another shape, got a shape of blue, I can then perhaps even come back with my shapes of blue and tweak them. So maybe my blue could spread out a little bit wider to cover that space. If I have got another brush and want to touch it as I go. So now it's easier to compare the shapes. Okay, so ones might be somewhere a little bit here. And I'll be using now thicker paint. I didn't dip my brush into any of the tubes or oils, just the paint, because it's quite soft paint on this surface. I think that will work better. Okay, and if I look at the shape of my column rather than just a blue sky, my shape of the column is slowly will get straighter. But this side, I think there will be a building there to correct it, but for now, I'll just keep it light. Okay. Anything else? While I have tiny bit of blue on my brush, perhaps ultramarine and a tiny dab of Payne's grey. I'm thinking of tiny bit of light on the window here, but I think maybe it's too blue. Maybe a little bit more grey, or maybe it could have been a little bit of violet even. It's not so much the light behind this window, it's more of the grid, which if I put it in a cooler color, I think it will help me later on to work with other shapes. Okay, that's quite blue. Maybe a tiny bit more violet. And Payne's grey. Okay. Tiny bit more darker tone over. Okay, so it's slowly settling in there. And this one is somewhere there as well. Okay. Right, anything else? Lighter tones. I think that will stay there, here. Okay, and perhaps my columns at the bottom, if I started to have some nice warm color here, columns often were reused, brought from other places, from the Mediterranean, and often made from different materials and have different tops. The capitals will have slightly different designs. Sometimes they've been made deliberately and they all matched, but not always. So I can see my further away column here is much, much lighter material. This one is much more cooler material. This is much more warmer material. So we can make our decision if we want to unify them. I feel quite good to make the bases look quite cool, but I've got my warm color, and I think if I were to place a little bit of warmth, so I'm the artist, I'm the one who making those final decisions. If you would have put some cool color, would have been fine as well, but just need to make sure that it's not clashes with our sky. Okay, I think that one still spreading out a bit low. Okay, that's better, somewhere softer. Okay. And then we can start painting a little bit more of the ceiling. Okay. And we can have two options. We can use diluted color, and like we started to spread our diluted ochre and white, or we can place a little bit more thicker paint. Kind of, I think if I were to put a bit more of a grayish tone, it would be a bit boring, because it's actually quite a light tone for the ceiling. We've got those patterns quite dark. So maybe let's start with the darker patterns and then just see how that ceiling will start glowing against it. So I'm going to go for some stronger violet. Okay. And a little hint of ochre. I haven't got any white. Okay. And my lower ceiling decorations, it's harder to see the pattern there, so it's easier to paint it as a shape. Okay. Perhaps a little bit of structure to that. This is all runny, so it's lost its silhouette. So just the pattern of that shape will be fine. And perhaps that final shape there as well. I think that could go a little further here as well. And let's look at this pattern here. Okay. I think I could actually, looking at the shape now, maybe I can take it a little further. Okay, and that, let's just double check it's oval. I was just double checking the size. Now let's see the whole darkness of it first. Probably have a little bit of ochre on the root of my brush, so it's gives me a gentle blend of color. Okay. And if it hasn't given me the blend, I can add a little ochre and have a tiny bit of that light coming in. So I've just established the shape first, and then a little bit of warmth through. Again, a little bit of ochre again, perhaps for that lower part. Okay, and it's getting more into the dark. So I'm seeing the whole pattern as a block of light and dark first. Okay. And only then we can subdivide little shapes or give that slight connection. Okay, it doesn't help that it's extra shiny. And I just put something else behind. And brush. There we go. Again, a little extra light, white and ochre. Maybe just a little bit of some sort of connection of light. Okay. And this one, it's there, but just on the screen of the photograph, it's hardly even, we can see that. So I might just put the least amount of texture there. Okay, let's bring the darkness back. So just more of a hint there. Okay. And I think I'm ready to do the walls for the ceiling. So I'd like you to spot our shapes of yellow, yeah? Yes, it's a stronger yellow. Yes, it's a bit more darker yellow, but it's a simplified shape. We have a shape on the floor. Yes, it's slightly a bit more Again, solid, slightly bit more diluted, it's still there. We've got shapes, couple of shapes, smaller shapes for the sky. We've got slightly orangey shapes. We've got slightly darker shapes, yeah? Yes, we've got a bit more of a change of darkness quite rapidly at the back wall, but we're trying to still see doors. They still all appearing of a similar darkness, of a similar shape, yeah? We can slowly start working into them, but those are starting points. Right, and now the ceiling. We can see a little how the light is traveling. It's going all the way down, but the ceiling is white, and all the patterns and how the light interacts. It stretches, it changes. It's in those kind of middle parts between the arches. It looks, we've got a little bit, tiny bit more light than when it stretches out to the narrower segments. So if we just take it as a little bit more as a formula, I think that might be easier for us. And also to show the one side is closest to the stronger light. If we make it tiny bit more dark on one side than the other side, that would be good as well. Now I'm going to go for diluted violet and diluted ochre without any white, but I think the diluted violet might be more dominant color in there. Might just see how much of the ochre I'm actually going to bring in. Let's just test it out. Okay. Or do I want a little bit more white to that? Let's have a look. But still more darker version. I don't want it to be too dark, but I want to feel it's not a stone, it's not a kind of, okay. That's the same almost as my background here. Let's see if I place it here. Now I need a little bit of extra light from warmth of ochre, I think. Okay. Just going to tweak it. Let's try this one. Okay. So this is my lightest section of the ceiling, somewhere roughly in the middle. Now, if you were to paint over our horizontal lines, that's fine. If you just leave a little bit of them, so then you know where they're going to be. Or if you still have those bases, I think that's where my lines are going to be. But this one, I would lose its reference. Actually, I've got the column, so I wouldn't. So if we paint over our lines, it's okay as well. And as I'm going tiny bit out of that little center, let's make it gently darker. And the oils gives us that beautiful blending qualities. Okay. I might go over some of my darker lines here just to make the play kind of the whole piece to belong to the same environment. And again, from this center I'm going away, I can make it a tiny bit darker here. Just a little smudge. As it didn't blend properly. And we said this corner I'm going to have slightly darker version because it's more in the shadow. So I might just exaggerate those corners. slightly. I still want some of the light. Okay, too bright. Okay, just stretch that slightly odd. Okay, could have maybe even used ultramarine, but I think that would be quite nice. Or Payne's Gray, just to dab it darker, but I think it's the Payne's Gray will add that blue touch of blue in the color. Not so much just darkness, but coolness. If I would have gone for ultramarine, might have been a bit too bright. Okay. Okay, that nice soft edge. I'm not sure if my oval now is straight. Again, I can tweak that at some point later. I can use my violet and Payne's Gray if I wanted to tweak the widths of the arches here, if I wanted to sharpen it or if I wanted partially be soft. I think that's playfulness, what's going to stay a little extra sharper, what will just have that change of focus. Okay, so I quite like it soft and sharp and sharp and soft. And that's going to be behind it. Just a little bit more clear. Okay. And now we're going to go for a smaller version of the ceiling further the back space. So I might just exaggerate where it's going to be slightly darker and where it's going to be slightly lighter. Maybe that cooler tone will just checking against my picture. Maybe it will be quite nice. Tiny bit darker though for the corners again. Just want to blend it. So unless you put the color on your picture, you wouldn't know if it's gonna work for you. Okay, that's a bit better. It's settled there, but it's not too jumpy. Okay, that's when I can again start tweaking my widths of my arches, or the widths of their shadows, or the widths of their light. Okay, maybe not huge jump in that darkness. Okay, it's quite purpley. I think I wanted a little bit more coolness or warmth in it or something. I think it might be a bit too purpley. Let me experiment with tiny bit more of the color. That's too light. Maybe that ochre and Payne's Gray. They mix in more into the green type of gray. So if I were to use that and mix with my existing warm color, I think it might be just do something a little neutral. Okay, but not too light. I'm a little bit struggling with reflections here as well. As I've set up my camera so it's not reflecting, but for me it is reflecting, right? So let's see if we'll just blend this one. Okay, anything goes of our colors. What feels right for you? Okay, that's settling in. I'm just working into that. Okay, that's better. That creative strokes. You started to, the more you work into that, because we're using the same group of colors. They're all getting mixed together. They're all interacting well together. So that's another reason why we're using a smaller volume of colors today. Okay, can I tweak any other overall shapes? Okay, any other tiny tweaks of that darkness? And oil is so wonderful in blending and stretching the color. Okay, maybe these ones will have a little more light. Good, 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 good. And perhaps any of my palette lighter color. So if I'll pick up some white and pick any color from my palette, so might be a grayish, might be warm, might be cool. I think that will be my light for the columns here. Okay. Wobbly to begin with. A little thinner line or suggestion on a line. And to make the columns a little bit more three-dimensional, we'll put the capital, maybe some sort of pattern of light. Just a little. And then if I were to clean my brush, just wipe it off and use just pure oil to gently smudge my color. If I smudge it vertically, it becomes less effective. If I smudge it tiny bit diagonally, I end up with a better shape. Okay. Again, I might just clean my brush and just tidy the other side so it looks a little bit more straight, and this side as well. And it makes it slightly more neater. Okay. Okay, and this one, just a mini soft or mini wash blend of that darkness. You will have some lovely runny darks in there. Looks quite a nice chunky column now. So perhaps I were to put a little extra darker tone behind it. Now the background color of my board gives me a silhouette of potential building at the back, which is quite a good suggestion for color, suggestion for tone. However, if you want to carry on that lovely warmth of the back wall, we can use the ochre and violet just to carry that connection of the spaces going through there. And it might be changing. There might be another window. Might even have another hint of it from another window. And some more shadows. So I'm just working with violet and ochre. Okay, it might be another shadow and another arch. Just a little exploring of those mini spaces if you have them. And so that's perhaps will be somewhere in my arch, but I'm not too worried where it's going to be. And I'm going to make a facade of the building, kind of the front view of it. Probably keep it in my current darkness. I quite like that color. It doesn't take too much attention from my light. If you were to put tiny bit more definition of light, I think that might be maximum, so it doesn't take that attention. If there is another dome, or okay, might be just enough, just that hint. And then we can start tweaking things. Start tweaking things in the most exciting way. Okay, where we can bring some smaller brushes and bring some nuances to our painting. I need to top up some of my colors. My ochre and white are running out. And let's put some extra juicy strokes, which will start making our painting more and more exciting. Right, we spotted we've missed a little corner here as well. And it's actually, we've got a little extra exciting warm light. So if I'll go for my ochre and violet, and make something maybe nice and warm tone here, so we can just see that little thickness of that arch coming in. Okay, and we have a little extra corner in the darkness, and we have perhaps a diluted darker version of the color. It's a tiny bit more darker. Okay, perhaps a little exaggerated. Okay, let's shape this one. Okay, good. I quite like the connection of blue with the windows. Without the windows cooler color, I think that sky would be a little bit lonely, a little bit too much. Okay, right, and I think I'm also going to come back to my Payne's Grain Violet horizontal lines. I want to have those metal connections. They might give me a little bit more exciting structure. So that's what's somewhere here. And that's coming to my column here across. It doesn't have to be solid, so I've kind of sketched it so you've got a little bit of a gap. it will look more natural if we don't put a super solid line. You can end up with more solid line closer to us, but even closer, I'm quite happy for it to be a little bit lost and found, at least for now. Okay, and let's find the other ones. Right, so that's gonna come somewhere here. And that tells me that my column base has shrunk a little bit lower, so I need to put it slightly up. And that yellowish orange color might go higher. Okay. And then the other ones will go approximately. And if there's smudge in your colors and that little color drags the light, that's quite exciting as well. So that's somewhere behind. And that's one is somewhere else behind there. Okay, so now I'm stretching that light color. That's quite exciting as well. I'm not going to make it dark. I might even put that drag off color across lighter. So it's here perhaps. So we can see it against the darker tone. It just gives that a little something extra for it. Okay, now let's tidy what little messy corners I've added here. That was a nice arch here, so maybe that's gone too high. Okay, but a little more sharper structure will be good there as well. Right, and let's play. Any shadows? Well, I've got a darker color on my brush. Any of that shadow? Violet, ochre, violet, Payne's gray, a little bit more diluted. So that variation of darkness will be possible. Okay, so let's add that. Okay, just approximately there. That might not be as strong, only because I've got other dark lines across and I don't want to make a huge feature out of it. Can I tweak? I'm happier with this arch, but the top of it might need a little tweak. Maybe this will stay more suggestive. Okay, what about the arch below? Does it need a tiny bit more of a tweak? And it doesn't have to be the same darkness. It might just have a little extra tension, lost and found shape. Yeah, a little bit more of a tension. Okay. I'll tweak the volume of light I was placing on my arch as well, so I can use the slight darkness. Okay, and a little blender. Okay. Perhaps a little stronger endings here. Stronger violet. We see it as quite a exciting darker shape. Okay, maybe that will again land through, quite like this light. Okay, maybe this one tiny bit narrower. Okay. Good. Any darknesses for the columns bases? Any messy areas need to unite a little more. Now the light on the courtyard might be improved. I think if I'll make it slightly lighter, possibly connecting with my sky again, paler blue, ultramarine and white. And if I'll merge it in between some of my, kind of place it next to the columns and coming out, it might show the extra. And this time the paint is thick, so I can do smaller strokes, blend it with my existing color. Maybe it will be how the marble stone is got that texture. Why is that light coming in? Okay. And I also would like to put a bolder light, a little more, just touching the back wall. I think that's brings slightly more depth to the space as well. Okay. Anything else? Perhaps the doorways, they're very flat, and actually will have again some coolness in the shadows. Again, perhaps using a bit of ultramarine and violet, ultramarine and any of our palette colors to make it slightly cooler. That's grayish, but might need tiny bit more darker tone. Let's try that. So it's lighter than the door, but it still shows the shadow. Okay. And that similar color could be part of the patterns on our wall, suggesting a door frame, suggesting other indentations. Yeah. That's how much or how little you want to play with those details. Perhaps a closer door might have more textures, and I can also put a little extra highlights there, quite like this one left. Very suggestive. We can see the texture of the wall, how the stones varied. So our diluted paint have that beautiful connection to it. And the top of the door, I'm going to have an extra darker shadow. I'm using Payne's Grey and Violet just to have that a little extra darkness. Okay. And let's repeat the process on other doors. More of the connection of texture. Okay. Suggesting some sort of pattern, and by that I'm tweaking the widths of the doors as well. Might even have something else on my back door, that door frame in stone first. If that's references some of my colors of my columns. Excuse me. a little extra white. So I'm connecting one color to a possible connection to another shape here. Okay. And the reason I was spotting the light on the column because I wanted to put a little more light tweaks of that gray and that super wide chunks, perhaps just a small amount, perhaps just that front main door where I can see it more. Maybe the other doors will have a little bit more white and oak, and they're just not going to have that much attention. I just sharpen some of its borders. Yeah, and that gives me playfulness. So I'm no longer looking at the photograph. I'm going to start looking at my painting and seeing what it will benefit from. Perhaps a little playfulness of light on the wall. Okay, or a little more. I think maybe even this light could go on my metalwork here. Just perhaps just catching some light from somewhere via the arch here. Yeah, it just gives you that space. Okay, anything else I want to work with this light, maybe across. Okay, maybe that's going to be too bold. Maybe a little too bold. Just want to have little variations of light. Just something is not going to be too flat. Okay, that's too strong. Okay, any other lovely, exciting marks? Perhaps some violet and ochre, a little bit more stronger. Let's say put some more pattern somewhere here. If we've got some more shadows there, that might just bring things coming close. I definitely don't want to put anything on these arches, but that space, perhaps more violet. Now I want something darker there, some sort of connection, but I think a little more violet. Okay, violet looks too weak, so maybe my even Payne's gray will need to go. The reason the violet is becoming weaker because I've got quite a lot of paint in the area. So the moment I apply a stroke, it gets overwhelmed by the lighter tones of the paint there. Okay, I think that's quite nice. Maybe a little connection might come here, maybe a little connection there. and where that light is partially stopping. Okay. Looks a little plain here. Can I improvise and add any other texture some of the windows might have had? And I'll just see if that will work. Often Christian churches will have some extra details, and they all have very similar attributes. Okay, down a bit more correct in the perspective. Anything other wise? Well, some of the cooler pattern will come here. If I'm not sure, I'll happily experiment and tweak back, you know, if I didn't like it. Quite like those sharper shadows, so I was considering tweaking them, but I'm happy with where they are. Maybe small amounts of dabs on my columns tops. I think they're drying slightly darker. Just don't want too much attention, but at the same time, that's there. Leaving the columns not in perfect shapes, but they're working and not overly taking too much attention. Perhaps when the oil starts gently drying, I can revisit my columns and have a stroke or two just to give them perhaps a little more tension. I do like them being soft. Get any lines smudged into them. Okay, any other light? Can I follow anything else through? Maybe even as a last look. Maybe if I bring that back wall light slightly more intensive and perhaps slightly stronger in that diagonal. And perhaps even bring some of that light or warmth in connection with my wall here. I think that's settling it down as a unity for my painting. Okay, it's quite a big change in the last moment, but it's came quite naturally. That's quite good. And also I'm thinking of getting that little connection. It's almost like the painting starts giving you more ideas as you develop it. I think I'll be stopping shortly. It's those little pressing marks and stuff, kind of little dabs. Anything else, anything else, anything else? Some of these could go gently lighter. They are turning towards the sun. And I think I will stop for today. I could look at the doors, but I quite like them staying darker there, and it's not giving me too much attention. I like my back door. It's not as solid like a hole through, but it's on the photograph it's just a block of black. Can't see as much space in there, but it's more of a tangible shape. But if I wanted to have more details on it, yeah, I've got a little handle on it now, or little connections of I don't know, locks, door handles, something there. Yeah, it just makes it a little bit more human and a bit more understandable. But I'm happy with that quick sort of light, using minimal color and using simplicity of shapes. So that's really exciting. So thank you very much for today, and I look forward to seeing your pictures and your versions of them.